Hi, and welcome to Westeros.org's video review for episode 6, Blood of My Blood. This week, I wouldn't say that there's too much in the way of spoilers for, future books, in the sense that, yes, obviously the storylines move onwards, but in terms of big revelation, there's nothing to compare with last week's episode. There is a kind of revelation of sorts, but I don't know how well it actually lines up with anything that's going to happen in the books. So, if you're somehow cherry picking which episodes you're watching and trying to avoid spoilers, this one wouldn't be too bad, to be honest. We'll start off Beyond the Wall this week, where we have two different segments, and in the first one, people are likely to be pausing their videos quite a bit because, videos, or whether however you're watching the episode, but Bran is stuck in Vision Land. He's still sort of stuck in, seeing things, and we get a flash of images from various scenes, and I haven't had time yet to go through it in detail myself, but there are some from things that he's seen recently in his other visions, like Ned at the Tower of Joy. I believe there was an image of Robb being killed at the Red Wedding. The most interesting, perhaps, are the ones that don't really connect directly to Bran as such, because it's Aerys on the Iron Throne saying, "Burn them all," and I think there's also one with the appears to be a tunnel filling with flame or something like that. So whether these are, most of these seem to be in the past, whether all of them are, or there are actually some that flashed by there that you can see as, find some glimpses to the future. So that one's quite interesting that they decided to go, all out with one sort of mix of visions for Bran. And that's an interesting part. It's an interesting open to the episode. I do find the logistics, as I said last week, with their escape and Hodor's sacrifice at the door. It's a bit curious that they've now managed to get so far ahead of the Whites that the Whites have to find them again. As Bran says, Mira, they found us. Mira must be, damn strong and, dragging that sled like, nothing else to be able to get ahead of the Whites, given how fast they are on the TV show. Of course, that allows for a character to swoop in and rescue them, and that is the reappearing Benjen. Not sure quite what to make of this, how that relates to anything that might be showing up in the books, but what we do know is that at the time of writing A Storm of Swords, George was at least not intending Benjen to have the Cold Hands role. I mean, this seems to be sort of a late introduction of a figure sort of like Cold Hands, certainly with the idea that we see later that he's supposed to have been on the way to be turned into a White, but the children found him and stopped the magic using an obsidian blade, just like the way that they turned somebody into the first other using the obsidian blade. So anyway, with George, and why do we know it? Well, when somebody went to the collection at the Texas A&M University, where they keep, George sends various, incomplete state manuscripts and complete manuscripts, and they sort of store a collection of his work there. And somebody went there and looked at it, because most of it is public. They've now restricted some more of it, basically until the series is done. They looked through the Storm of Swords manuscript and found a question in the margin when Cold Hand shows up from Anne Grohl, George's editor, which said, "Is this Benjen?" And George had answered it no, I think even with an exclamation sign or in capital letters. So that wasn't his intention at the time anyway. But here they seem to be having him taking that role, showing up to rescue Bran and Mira, and mostly it's fine, but I am a little dubious of the way the final conversation with Bran goes, where sort of he explains, well, you have to be the three-eyed crow, you have to learn, and you have to be the one, when the Night's King finds his way to the realms of men, you have to be ready and you have to stop him. I think it's because they turned the Night's King into, or they made a figure among the others that was sort of a focus point, a recognizable villain. This starts to feel an awful lot like the farm boy who's being told his destiny is to stop the Dark Lord. It feels a bit more like a fantasy cliche than the way it is presented in the books. I'm not saying that Bran isn't going to be instrumental in doing whatever needs to be done regarding the others in the books, because I do think he's going to be central to that. It's just, there was something about that conversation and the dialogue that just really rang false to me and felt very much like bog standard fantasy. But, we'll see where it goes. This week we also get a nice little family reunion at Horn Hill when Sam brings Gilly and their son to see the rest of his family. And, well, I've expressed my opinions before about how I feel about the Sam and Gilly love story, and this episode doesn't exactly endear me more to it. I find this whole episode fairly pointless, especially the way it wraps up. And if you just look at the dinner and the dinner conversation with the family, they're just some sort of things that rang a bit false to me there as well. I mean, it could be, entirely appropriate for Randall Tarley to be, he's not exactly the most, he's rather misogynistic in the books, as, most lords, and he might be a bit extreme in it. But the idea that a house like Tarley would have a problem with the daughters of the house learning to hunt when it's a perfectly fine pursuit for a noblewoman in Westeros seems a bit odd, but he might be extreme, and that's fine. I also found that his extreme antipathy against wildlings was rather curious for such a southern lord. That northern lords are very much, collaborating with wildlings are ancient enemies. That's a no-go. But that strength of sentiment, anti-wildling sentiment, shouldn't really be present in the same degree, I think, in a house like Tarley, and he wouldn't approve. But I find it hard to feel that he would feel that it was such a big difference between assuming, she might be a Moletown Horn, and then when he finds out she's a wildling, he's absolutely distressed. I think that it wouldn't be that much of a difference for him, to be honest. Both would be pretty bad. But, fine. Not too bad anyway, I can buy it. But then we get on to the real problem, which is, when he basically banishes Sam again and says, well, Gilly can stay and work in the kitchens, and, I'll raise the kid here. Sam changes his mind about going in the middle of the night and decides, we're leaving together. And not only is he deciding to sneak off with Gilly and Sam and take them God knows where, still to the Citadel, I don't know. But apparently he's decided that going to the Citadel requires stealing his family sword, Heartsbane, and taking that along. Alright, I really don't know where they're going with this story, but the idea that Sam seems to be abandoning just about everything and doing everything for Gilly, it's just not what the character should be about, and I really dread to think where they're going next, to be honest, because it really can't. Well, it can get worse. That's the thing. It really can get worse, and it's tedious already. Next we have King's Landing, and well, at least we didn't get a speech from the High Septon this week. Not very long one anyway. I'll give him a pass on that one. It wasn't really a speech when he's on the steps of the Sept and telling the people why Marjorie is there to do her walk of atonement. And apparently it is primarily for lying. Okay, lying in a religious, context, and it's bad, I guess. But the thing is, it really isn't made worse by her being the queen. The accusations leveled against her in the books, adultery as the queen. That's very serious because, adulterous queens might have children that aren't exactly the offspring of their husbands, thus endangering the whole idea about, who's going to be inheriting the throne and all that. So that's a big deal. Adulterous queens are a huge no-no. In fact, they are treasonous. Lying doesn't really matter whether you're the queen or, Joe the blacksmith. So I'm guessing if that's the stance that the Faith is taking, there's a lot of naked people walking the streets of King's Landing. But it doesn't come to that, because apparently Marjorie has converted, or become very zealous anyway, and she has brought Tommen into the light as well. I'm not sure what to make of this, to be honest. She seems quite convincingly sincere in her talk with Tommen, has a vibe of religious fanatic about her. Tommen certainly looks very serious and very convinced. There is a scene, the last scene that she had with the Loras, where he tells her, you know, let them win, and maybe she's supposed to have gotten the idea from that it's, you know, this is the only way out, at least, you know, I'll get out. But it's really difficult to say. She could be sincere, and not sure what to make of it then. Certainly it doesn't please the, you know, gathered Tyrells of, you know, Mace and Olenna there, and Jaime, and they just have to turn around and see themselves defeated. Things get even worse for Jaime, of course, because the next thing is that Tommen decides to kick him out of the Kingsguard. Yeah. Okay, there's precedent, fine, but the very idea of kicking Jaime out of the Kingsguard, I mean, this character is on a path that is so incredibly different than Jaime in the books that I just don't know what to make of it. And the final scene then with Larry and Carol, well, yeah, because that really isn't Jaime and Cersei. It just isn't Jaime and Cersei. When they are again reaffirming their undying devotion to each other, and how, you know, we're the only two people in the world, we're the only two that matter, and we're going to show them all and, you know, kill them all for doing this thing to us Lannisters. They're just not going to break that couple up, are they? I mean, they've had, I don't know how many opportunities now where Jaime could decide that he's had enough of Cersei, but no, he really, really, really likes his Cersei on the show. And there's just nothing she can do or anyone else can do to change his mind about that. So I guess now they are, you know, squeezing in the Riverlands plotline. I mean, we knew that from the previews for the season that was going to happen. So now he's going to be off leading an army outside the city, and that's an awesome idea according to Cersei, so I guess she's expecting him to take it right back later on and, you know, attack the city if needed or something along the lines. It's just tragic watching, I mean, Jaime, you know, Cersei was never on the right track on the show. It was always a lost cause ever since they, you know, cast Lena Headey and decided to change the character as much as they did from the get-go. But Jaime was on track. I mean, meeting up with Brienne and all of that, it was on track there. And then he just fell down some hole along the way, and I'm not going to speculate on what sort of hole he fell into, but yeah, you can guess. Braavos is pretty strong this week, again, as with this last segment where they had part of the play. I do enjoy the way they decided to do it, and the exchange between Arya and the actress playing Cersei, Lady Crane, after the show is also quite interesting. The way she's sort of been analyzing the character of Cersei, and also the way that Lady Crane picks up on you know, Arya liking to pretend to be other people. Although she hasn't been doing a huge amount of that, but still, she certainly had some different roles, and so it works out nicely. And then, of course, we get the fact that she refuses. Basically, she stops the assassination, that she had poisoned the rum, and then decides that no, she's not going to go through with it. She warns her from drinking it, and she's being watched by the waif, who then goes to Jaqen and lets him know that Arya didn't do as she was told, and now they're going to take her out. And it seems Arya has some sort of premonition that it's going to go this way, because she goes and picks up Needle, and then she finishes off she's sitting in a room with just a candle lit, and then she blows it out, and she sits there waiting. So I'm guessing that she's expecting the waif or someone to show up and take her out, basically. In this episode, we also get to see Walder Frey again, that lovable, cranky old bastard, and he is amusing, and he's very well played, I have to say. The way he's going on to his, relatives, and that he doesn't have much faith in about how they've, you can't lose a castle, presumably you still know where it is. That dialogue feels like, something that Walder Frey should be saying, and he's appropriately grumpy, and it's also nice that in the sequence we get some actual houses brought up. We get Mallister and Blackwood, that they've rebelled against the Freys, and also that the Brotherhood is raising the common people against the Freys. So yes, we're definitely touching on the Riverland storyline here, and I think that whenever we get these sort of mentions of houses and working in details like that, it always seems like we get more of them in the episodes that Brian Cogman writes. So he does tend to have a bit more of an interest in bringing in details from the books. So that's always nice to see. And I guess we're basically going to see this storyline, tying together with Jaime, obviously. And, we've got Brienne heading south as well. So I guess it's going to come together somewhere around Riverrun in a few episodes. The final scene outside of Vaes Dothrak is one that I've struggled with how to discuss and what to say about it, because when I initially looked at it the first time, I thought, wow, this is a pretty strong scene. This is quite impressive, having, Dany swoop in on Drogon and give this very fiery speech in Dothraki, naming the Khalasar as her blood riders, and saying, will you be with me to take the things that Drogo promised me. So it's well acted. I mean, speaking Dothraki and being fiery in that sense is something that Emilia Clarke does seem to do quite well. But the setup of the scene, when I started to think about it and when I started to break down the episode, there's a lot of problems. First, there's a problem in the lead into this scene, which is the fact that they have Daario be the one telling Dany, you're a conqueror, and somehow that gives her the idea to present her as the conqueror to Dothraki. If she didn't already have this idea, what was she doing in episode 4? I mean, yes, okay, maybe you're saying that he just gave her the idea right then and there to present herself like that and bring Drogon in and let's show them what I am. But I think it would have worked a lot better if he had given her a reason without saying that to say that, no, I'm a conqueror, and I'm going to, and then going off without saying what she's going to do and fetching Drogon and giving this display. But even better would have been if we didn't have these two separate segments in episode 4 and episode 6. This should have been how episode 4 ended, not with the repeat of the first season finale of her just walking out unharmed from the fire after setting it herself. That fire in there should have been set by Drogon swooping in to rescue her. Then she could walk out of it, fine. And then with him standing behind her, landing behind her, or maybe she could climb up on his back. That's where she gives this speech to the Dothraki that have gathered. That, and obviously she shouldn't have then repeated more or less the same things inside of the hut already. That should be what that should be her realization that the dragon and she are one. He'll come when he senses her distress. There is a bond between them, and now she's going to declare herself for what she is. She's fire and blood, she's a conqueror, she's every bit as much of a dragon as her children. Splitting it up like this was very strange. Yes, he gave them two, on paper and visually strong endings, but story-wise and structurally, it just doesn't make any sense. the more I think about it, it just falls down flatter and flatter, and they just do things for these moments without thinking of how it looks in you know, in a longer view of a character arc. So it's quite disappointing that they do these strong visuals and they just don't think about what it means for the story. And you know, that yeah, it is just disappointing when they manage to do a great visual, and I think that milking it for 2 episodes like this was unfortunate in the end, quite unfortunate. Overall, well, it's not an atrocious episode by any means, but it does lack real highlights as well. I mean, the Danny scene is visually good, but problematic in, you know, the story-wise. There are some real weak points like Horn Hill and parts of King's Landing, like the Jaime and Cersei scene. I think it counted up about 5 eye rolls and definitely a spin for Jaime and Cersei. I mean, that really just makes them want to roll out on the floor and never come back, to be honest. In terms of what this episode, how it relates to future elements of the books, well, I've already touched on what I think about the Benjen appearance and whether he's gonna play a similar role. I mean, if he ever shows up again, I think the likely place is Hardhome, and that's already played out on the show, so they've obviously changed that, and I do believe that he isn't supposed to be Cold Hands in the books, that George has stuck to that intention, so that's going to be quite different. I don't think that if he's alive, he's, you know, partially whiteified or anything like that. Arya's storyline is an interesting one to start wondering about. Is she going to have this sort of break with the Faceless Men? I find it dubious. I mean, obviously we don't know what's going to happen at this point. It could be that, you know, I don't think that the waif is going to kill her, so most likely she's going to kill the waif. Where does that leave her? Is she going to kill Jaqen as well? I'm not sure. I don't see her becoming that much on the outs with him in the books, but, you know, she certainly isn't good at obeying orders. So there could be problems in that, but maybe it's just that my personal vision of where Arya is going have always involved her going further down the path of becoming no one and actually becoming more or less a faceless man, but maybe that isn't the intention. So that one's really difficult to speculate on. Sam, you know, I don't think, you know, he's certainly not going to get his hands on Heartsbane anytime soon, and since he's not madly in love with him, will do anything for Gilly in the books, I certainly don't see any development at all like that. And, you know, as far as the Riverlands go, well, you know, that's, we're still in the material that, you know, is in the books so far, and obviously it's going to wrap up in some way that it's going to be a future a storyline in the books, but we haven't really gotten to a point where we can see how it is about to wrap up. So I think that's it for this episode, and I'll be back next week with episode 7, The Broken Man. And we might see if we're going to get a video out this week. Unfortunately, Elio is again sick, so I've escaped it yet, but, you know, never know when I'm going to get it too. It's a flu this time, so we'll see what we can manage. We're playing catch up on a few things, but until the next time.